Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to this weird talk I'm going to myself via Zoom. I guess I've titled this Steve Ting, Maker, Crafter, and Artist. I guess I don't see myself really as any of those. I'm someone who has severe anxiety and as a result has to keep making stuff or he'll go crazy.
You're definitely a maker.
Yeah, well, that in that sense, yeah.
Yeah.
So
it just seems too limiting for you.
I just think I'm Steve, and that's probably the best way of putting it. Anyway, going forward, let's start at the very beginning. It's a very good start. I had a fairly unique upbringing. Up until the age of 6, I'm pretty sure that everyone's dad was Chinese, not just mine. So when I found out there were like white dads around, I was kind of shocked. I grew up in a fairly unique household, Chinese dad, white mum. That's actually me with my grandmother and with my brother. And yeah, we grew up in Hamilton, though I don't like to admit it. Those who've been to Hamilton understand this.
I grew up in Hamilton for a while as well. I totally feel you.
Yep. Though I did spend most of my summers in the Coromandel where my parents live now. But one thing we always had was we had Dad's shed. That's me, looking slightly worried, but that's okay. Moving forward, that's my dad and my mum there. This is the only portrait I could find of them where my brother had put flames and police cars on the background. But anyway, there's my dad, there's my mum. Mum's a Parongia girl. Grew up as a farm girl, seduced herself a Chinese guy, and had a whole bunch of mixed race babies. The main thing we're going to focus on the fact that the inspiration for a lot of what I do obviously came from my father, who has spent his life being what he's called a failed Asian. Like, he was never good at being a doctor, or he was never a lawyer or anything like that, but he was always good with his hands. And so he's always good at making things, and spend a lot of his free time making things, rebuilding the house, doing all sorts of things. Hated paying for trade people, so he'd do it himself. So that he is the crazy Chinese maker, going through some of the stuff. So when he went into semi-retirement, he got bored, and so he became a tattoo artist. That's him tattooing my brother at the moment, who is also a tattoo artist. He works a lot with Hebel, which is a concrete matrix, which he treats as limestone and he carves himself. So he spent a good 10 years working on a Buddha.
I love that Buddha.
He's not Buddhist, he's Methodist, but we won't go into that. At the moment, he does a lot of chainsaw carving. So this is a log he picked up on the beach the other day and did his 4 boys as monkeys, I think. And
which one's you?
I'm assuming I'm the bottom, which is touch no evil. But
right.
Yeah. This is a tattoo he did for a client of his. He also does a lot of painting, which I generally didn't get the talent for. Yeah, so he spent his whole life making, and he encouraged us to make stuff. Because obviously we weren't the richest people in the world, so we'd have to make our own things if we wanted to. And that kind of translated quite well to an upbringing and who I am today. For those that don't know who I am, obviously Steve Ting. I was originally trained as a marine biologist and ecologist at Victoria University, and then I started majoring in science communication, where I fell into a videography and film roles, where I worked professionally in TV shows such as Highway Cops, Coast Watch, and all those horrible reality shows. I made a few natural history shows, did a lot of news work, and then I'm also a photographer as well. That's my casual walk around camera that I have. I can feel Owen's jealousy coming through the window.
Totally.
It's quite good.
Not just Owen.
At the moment, I'm a teaching fellow at the Center for Science Communication. So I've been doing that for about 8 years now, where I teach the new generation of students practical skills, where I mostly teach things such as podcasting, audio engineering, filmmaking, photography, and digital media construction and integration and all that. But overall, most of the time I'm teaching things like storytelling, which is the backbone of all communication. And, don't let anyone say otherwise. And as a result, I spent a lot of my time doing weird analog photography, where I did things like portraits there. I did a lot of pinhole photography. and alternative processes where I've been coating my own paper and all that kind of stuff. So that's a cyanotype process that I did a while back, and then stained it with tea or tannic acid, if you want to sound all scientific.
You've also built your own cameras, haven't you, Steve?
Not so much. I'm currently 3D printing cameras at the moment for a project that I'm going to be doing. I have built pinhole cameras in the past as well, but yeah, nothing too
I think one of the
sophisticated.
first conversations we had was about building a pinhole camera.
Yeah,
Yep.
just a drink can, like a nail. That's
Yep.
pretty much all you need. Anyway, on top of that, I spend a lot of my time roller skating and pole dancing, and sometimes combining that with ukulele work. And yeah, so that's who I am. Just your average, typical New Zealander, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah. Moving on, the things that got me where I'm going to be talking about today was, oh God, it's going back about 6 years now. I signed up for a blacksmithing course at the local Gasworks Museum, where I unfortunately got introduced to these two fellows. For those that don't know, that guy here is my chainmail guru, apparently. That is Jack Gohan of Jack Gohan Designs, who works at Weta. He then hired me as his cheap Asian labor and started teaching me how to make chainmail, which really appealed to me because all you essentially needed is pliers and a whole bunch of rings, and you didn't have to have a forge or anything like that on me. And in the background there is Jesse, who is also another maker in Dunedin, who's currently building a full R2-D2 at the moment, among other things. So he got me photographing his product pages, his products, so he could sell them. Ironically, this was done entirely on iPads because I couldn't be bothered getting my good cameras out, so I just ran around with an iPad to see what I could do. And then he started teaching me how to make chainmail, which I probably, like the rest of you, started off doing the 4-in-1 Europeans, things like full Persian. And then I started doing the micro chainmail, the really, really tiny rings. I don't know how many of you have used tiny rings before, but it does your head in, and you mostly do that for your feel rather than your eyesight, well, my eyesight anyway. Started playing around with that. Most of the time I've just kind of done basic things, nothing too complex, a lot of Byzantine variations. I work mostly in brass and stainless steel at the moment. I didn't really go for an anodized aluminium phase, really. Things like start getting a bit more complicated with elf weaves. For those who haven't done that, it's kind of fun because it can morph into 2 different shapes. Yeah, and then just kind of playing more around with design of the basic metals that I use rather than, getting too overly complex. That being said, I have gotten a little bit complex. There's the Persians. I'm quite a fan of half Persians. There's the elf sheet. For those who haven't done, that's really, really dense. And
when I first met you, you only wanted to work in brass and aluminium.
Yeah, and then you introduced me to stainless. Because you told me to. It's as simple as that, really. And then it was way laughing. Dragon scale variation.
I was expecting.
Dragon scale variations.
That's pretty. Oh man,
that one.
I haven't seen it with a half Persian edging yet.
Yeah, and
that's gorgeous.
That actually allows it to curve up as a necklace more, so it actually constricts one side. And it uses the same inner ring diameters as the dragon scale, so you don't have to actually get extra rings for that, so that works out well. Then I played around with scales like most of us do, and I'm actually going through these really quickly, so if you want to interrupt, feel free to interrupt. And then getting more complicated with things like interweaves and dragon backs and stuff like that. And then playing with more little weaves, tiny weaves, and viper scale.
Owen, I remember, I can't remember which piece it was. I think it was one of the first bone carvings you did, but we saw you at Armageddon just after you, or just as you were finishing it. So I think you were finishing it there.
Yep.
And after we came back here afterwards,
yeah,
Owen immediately found the smallest rings that he had to see what he could make out of them because he wanted to try it too.
Yeah, you told me about
it does your head in the tiny rings.
Yeah.
You really got to have patience for it, or you just got to have really good fingers compared to your eyes. So a lot of that's done by, feel more than anything else.
Yeah.
I have done the odd big piece, though I'm not overly too, I don't really have the patience. The shirt took me years to make just because I get bored really quickly and move on to my 1,000 other hobbies. But I did finally get it done. I wear it around class sometimes just to fuck with the students, which is fun. And then, of course, this monstrosity that Hannah sent me. I don't know if any of you guys have done a turbine before, but first of all, I was incorrectly told the amount of rings to be used.
Yeah, that was on me.
Yep, and I didn't think it was possible, and it was right. Physics basically became, but then she told me the right amount of rings, and even then I just still didn't possible. I actually had to use a large amount of wire to twist it all into shape in order to bring them together. It has worked. I'm very proud that I did it. Would I do it again? Probably never. Like I almost ripped my really nice pliers with this one.
Man.
And then I started doing other things. Like this is actually recycled electrical copper. And my mate Jesse made me the rings. Of course, copper is not the greatest thing to wear for a lot of people because they react. So we mitigated that by making a leather cuff for it.
Yeah.
And so I made the leather cuff. I used to wear this all the time, and then some guy brought it off me, and refused to let me leave the room until I sold it to him.
No.
So, and of course, Hannah can tell you guys later how I enjoy selling my own products.
Absolutely, it's his favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
I've found people that want to buy his stuff and are willing to give him money, but actually getting him to give them a price and also having enough stock to sell them.
I'm not really one who makes things to sell. I just make things. And of course, this is another kit that Hannah gave me that drove me kind of batty.
Yeah.
But it did come out quite nice in the end.
Oh, you got some gorgeous shots of that while you were making it as well.
Yeah. And I have done the odd bra.
Yep.
As well. So the basic bra kits, if you haven't done they're a lot of fun and pretty easy to do. And moving on from then, I had been bone carving in the past because my father taught me at quite a young age, and the last couple of years I got back into it. So doing the odd type of carvings, an eel I did for someone. But then I started thinking to myself, whoa, let's do a bit of a collision and see what we can do here. So taking something fairly traditional, like the tuki, which is the axe head that you can see here, and then marrying it with the stainless steel, like using the viper weave here. And I quite like that. I quite like this kind of weird juxtaposition for something that's quite uniquely European, which is the chainmail to the bone carving. So I played around with that a bit more. As you can see there, this is a manaya that I played around with, and then tied that with a stainless steel Byzantine chain. And I thought I could do, and I started getting the bug, so I explored even further. This one is actually, ironically, a screw up because I dropped the original. I dropped this one, which snapped the hook off. So then I actually combined that and made a half wooden hook by shimming in some brass and stuff. So that's, and it ended up like that, using the micro Byzantine weave. So I quite like that one. And
that is awesome.
That micro Byzantine is insane.
And then the final one which I did this year, so again using the manaya, but doing a simpler manaya, but doing a bit more complicated in the carving, doing the eye detail and all that kind of stuff. And this one is what you'd call flawed bone. It's the one that has a large amount of oil content in it, which a lot of people reject. I think it looks pretty cool. And in the end, I tied it with a European form one with a 45 intersection there. I think that worked out pretty well. And later on, I started playing around with resin, like most people do, and started doing the very typical carvings. So once again, the tuki, and doing things like earrings using reclaimed rimu. Again, the tiny little rings were useful for that. But then it's kind of the ultimate mashup was taking the idea of that bone carving and then similar to that, then using the resin and the chainmail, and that's what I ended up with here, which is essentially a riff on the tuki, but using burnt rimu, burning the ends, encasing that burnt end in resin. I then created some sort of a pass-through to allow the chain to actually flow freely through it, and there's the piece there. All right, and that's just finished with walnut oil and nothing else.
Okay, Steve, just because you hate selling your product so much, is there anywhere people can go if they want to buy something like what you've just shown us?
They could probably find me on Facebook or Instagram. I do have a website, but I'm about to shut that down because I'm redesigning it. But no, generally if someone wants to buy something of me, they can message me and I'll probably ignore it because I don't deal with that type of attention very well.
Yeah.
And so I generally don't do commissions at all. A lot of my work is only done purely by myself, and if I do people do end up with my work, it's usually given away as a gift. I have sold stuff in the past, but I'm not a huge fan of it. I've got an actual job for my income, so I'm not that worried about my stuff. And I also feel that I don't want to flood the market with other craftsmen who are working out hard there. So I tend to give away my stuff very rarely. But if I do, then you're pretty much a special person if you do have one of my carvings.
The thing that I like about your work, especially this last wood piece that's still up on screen, the thing that's been quite fun about the photos you've sent me of your bone carvings and stuff in process is it very much feels like you have an idea what you want to do, but you make it work to the materials that you're working with.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I just pull it around, really.
Yeah. But it kind of feels like because you're not going, I want to sell this, I'm making this because the market will like it. It gives you a wider flexibility in kind of what you can make.
Yeah, and also like it allows me to pivot on my projects quite a bit. So like I don't have to keep making the same thing over and over again to meet certain quotas. Like if you told me I had to make like 20 Byzantine chains, I would just kind of go, nah. Not going to happen. I would get bored and do something else, which is kind of what, I've done a lot of chainmail work lately, and I've currently haven't been doing a lot because I've been pivoting for other things, which I can talk to you guys about again sometime later. But yeah, if we look here, if I bring up the camera, hang on. Gotta make sure this is the right way up.
All good.
There we go. Okay, so these are the pieces here. If you actually see the relative size to my hands, you can see how tiny the Byzantine chain is. It's kind of ridiculously small, and like I said, a lot of this is done through feel rather than eyes. Well, it does for me because my eyesight's particularly bad. And when I was finishing this one in Armageddon lighting is pretty terrible, so I was just doing it. But I made that chain in one day, and it almost caused me to go bonkers.
I remember you kept coming over to our stool to kind of decompress.
Yep.
And swear about it.
Massages.
Yep.
This one's quite cool because this is just a long chain, and because it's a pass through here, then it will just it slides really nicely on that one, so I don't have to worry too much about that.
What clasp has you got on that? Does it slide through the clasp as well, or is it?
No, it doesn't. So it's got your bog standard lobster claw on there. These ones are just connected as a kind of a sense of necessity more than anything else. I got 3 rings around this one, so I kept that on there. I only chose 1 ring here, and it's got 3 rings here. It all depends on how you do things more than anything else. I don't get that worried. This is just some wood I think I found around the place and carved it up, stuck it in, and then I tied it so it became a seamless cover on that. And and this is the mythical turbine. If you turn that around, this is under a hell of a lot of pressure.
Oh yeah.
To keep that in. So getting that, the actual construction's really easily up until the point where you have to close the final ring.
Yep.
And that's
when the tension starts going up, that it really is an issue.
And so in the end,
the rings are steel.
Yeah. And in the end, I ended up clasping the 2 rings to get together, and then just gradually tightening the an extra set of wire, which slowly brought the rings together. But yeah, it almost killed me, and I swore I'd never do another one. This is the actual.
That's so bad.
This is the ball, which is really nice here. The cool thing about it is my mate has a lathe, and so he made me the base. which is a solid piece of steel and is quite nice to essentially put on the mantelpiece. So yeah.
I think I posted a photo of that on my Instagram a little while ago that you sent me of the Insanahedron on that base.
Yeah, yeah,
it's a really good combo.
It's really nice, and it's really, really heavy, so I could probably kill a person with that if I need to. So I know what I'm grabbing if there's ever a home invasion.
Good to know.
So yeah, so that's the type of work I've been doing. I don't have anything else to show you, unfortunately, but if anyone want to see some close-ups, we can quite go in and hey, there we go. System works. So yeah, the eyes are inset with power. As you can see, that takes a long that drives me a bit mad trying to get those in seamlessly. For those that haven't worked with bone before, it's not the nicest thing to breathe in. So I've had to add some fairly extraction units, but I tend to work a lot with hand tools to keep the dust down. Power, unfortunately, doesn't allow you to not have the luxury of working with a respirator. It tends to be very asbestos in nature, so as soon as that happens, I have to put a mask on and do that. But yeah, there's that, and you see the back there, and the back there, and yeah. So put that one to there, and bring this one in. A really basic one. I really like this because the design's basic, but the chain is a lot more complex. For those that haven't done Viper scale before, it can really do your head in because it's fairly asymmetrical in the way it's doing things. But it does look like a viper's skeleton, hence the term. And I can say that as someone who's taken zoology. So yeah, and yeah, so that's some of the stuff I get up to. So
does anyone have any questions at this point for Steve?
Look, I even have a questions page there.